Hello, everyone. My name is Vieri Beretti, and I'm pleased to be your host for tonight's virtual town hall discussion on a drought-proof solution for the coastal bend. Tonight, we'll be hearing from Mayor Paulette Guajardo and City Manager Peter Zanoni, followed by a presentation by Corpus Christi Water Chief Operations Officer Michael Murphy. After that, it will be your turn. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube and would like to make a comment live on air, please dial the phone number and ID code provided. Once connected, you can get in line at any time by pressing *3 on your phone keypad. An operator will ask for your first name and your community. You'll have 2 minutes to speak when it's your turn. If you wish to make comments in Spanish, we have Gabriela Moro of the City of Corpus Christi standing by to provide interpretation into English. At this time, I'd like to invite Mayor Guajardo to make her opening remarks. Mayor Guajardo.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this town hall on the city's proposed seawater desalination project. Tonight's town hall is an opportunity for you, the residents of our city and of the coastal bend, to learn and ask questions about seawater desalination, which we believe is the best way to provide us all with a safe, affordable, reliable, and sustainable water source. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce my city council colleagues joining us tonight. Councilman Billy Lerma, representing District 1. Councilman Ben Molina, representing District 2. Councilman Roland Barrera, representing District 3. Councilman Greg Smith, representing District 4, Councilman Gil Hernandez, representing District 5, at-large Councilman Mike Pusley, representing Citywide, and at-large Councilman John Martinez, representing Citywide. Also joining us is our City Manager, Peter Zanoni, and Chief Operating Officer for Water Utilities, Michael Murphy. So we're holding this town hall because we made a commitment to you that we would be open and transparent as our city worked to deliver an affordable, safe, and reliable solution to our regional water challenges. We all know that for too long, persistent droughts and chronic water shortages have threatened our economy and our quality of life. So it's time that we took action to ensure that our children and their children will have access to a safe and affordable water source. So that's what the Seawater Desalination Project is all about. And I'm very proud that the city is taking the lead on delivering on the promise of a reliable and sustainable water source for the entire coastal bend region. Seawater desalination is a proven technology that's being used successfully in other countries and in other states. So that's why we're here today, because it's going to ensure that our families, our businesses, and institutions that we rely on have clean, abundant, and affordable water for generations to come. And that brings us to this town hall. Tonight, we're keeping our promise to you to have an open and transparent process. I appreciate that there's a lot of interest around this issue and differing views, and I know that there are a lot of special interest groups, many from outside the coastal bend region, who want to make their voices heard. And I hope to also hear from the residents of Corpus Christi and from those all around the coastal bend region. We want to provide everyone the opportunity to be heard. Addressing our regional water challenges by developing a safe, affordable, and sustainable water source through seawater desalination is one of the most important things that we as a city council can achieve for the future of our city, our region, and for our children. So thank you all again for joining us tonight. And now I'd like to ask our city manager to make some brief remarks.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And welcome, community. We're glad you're here for another community engagement on this very important project that the City Council has been working on, as well as the city staff team. The mayor had a great introduction with a lot of great information, and I just have a few points to kind of reiterate on that, which is we must find new water for our region, not just the city of Corpus Christi, but the coastal bend region. We serve the coastal bend region, which is over 500,000 residents every day depend on our water. And we're at a point, our staff has shown with numerous models, where we need to find more water to continue to grow as a region. And we've asked the professionals out there, what is our best choice? What are our best options? This city council and ones prior have had professional firms from across the world tell us that our best choice is seawater desalination. We've looked at other choices such as groundwater and even water reuse. But again and again, the private firms out there that deal with water delivery across the globe have told us here in this coastal bend region, here in Corpus Christi, our best choice is seawater desalination. And we wanted to remind you that this project benefits a lot of different folks. It benefits you and me, and it benefits commercial business, and it benefits industry. So it's for numerous customers that were looking for that ultimate source of water that'll help us grow as a region and keep us a strong community here in Corpus Christi, but also here in the coastal bend region. So again, thank you for joining us again tonight. Community engagement is one of our cornerstones at City Hall. It's something this mayor and city council and myself as a city manager have embraced for many years, and it's an important part of what we do here at City Hall. So with that, Mayor, thank you for letting me make some opening remarks. And at this point, we're going to turn it over to Mike Murphy, our Chief Operating Officer over Water Utilities, to provide a little bit more detail on the project.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome to the town hall meeting, residents, business owners of the coastal bend region. I have a very short presentation to share with you for those of you who are not familiar with the desal process and why we're getting involved in this. So the thing I hope to take away from tonight is that seawater desalination is a drought-proof solution to secure water for the region of generations to come. So let's get started with the first slide.
Could you repeat that last part? Sorry.
Yeah, back up.
Okay,
Next slide.
next slide, please. There you go. Thank
Okay.
you. Next slide. So Corpus Christi Water provides water directly or indirectly to approximately 500,000 people across 7 counties in the coastal bend area. Our water comes from 4 main water sources. The first is the Choke Canyon Reservoir near 3 rivers, Lake Corpus Christi and Mathis, Lake Texana, and the Lower Colorado River near Bay City. All of these sources of water are surface water sources and are dependent on rainfall. No rain means no water to replenish these sources of water for our coastal bend area. Next slide, please. So no rain means drought. This particular slide shows a history of drought in our area since the 1800s. And drought happens more often than many may realize. And between the years of 2011 and 2014, we experienced what is called the Drought of Record, which means this is the worst drought that has been measured since 1850. And then last year, about this same time, the city of Corpus and the coastal bend region was under what is called a stage 1 drought response. The reason we show this slide is to reiterate that the periods of drought, which happen with frequency, our water resources become depleted. Next slide. And so after the Drought of Record in 2011, to the credit of our Corpus Christi City Council, they voted to establish a trigger point. The trigger point is when the city uses 75% of its firm yield. And what is firm yield? That is the amount of raw water that we supply available during the worst drought of record. The trigger point is was established by City Council when we reached the 75% point. Our records indicate right now, based on growth in the area, we will reach this particular trigger point in 2022. By adding seawater desalination as a raw water source, we will have enough water to supply to be back under the 75% threshold. Could we go to the next slide? So the city has applied for water permits in two specific areas with the TCEQ. The first one being the Inner Harbor Ship Channel and the second one being the La Quinta Channel. Both of these sites are currently being reviewed for intake and discharge permits by the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality. We understand that seawater desalination in this area is extremely critical to the growth and the future of our coastal bend area. And it's also important to know that desalination is the technology of the future for not just the coastal bend area, but also for the entire Gulf Coast region. And so I'm proud to say that the city of Corpus Christi and the coastal bend area are on the forefront of establishing this new source of what we're calling drought-proof water for years to come. And so with that, we're going to move forward with a very brief presentation to show those who are new to the desalination process a little bit about how the desalination effort works.
Seawater desalination is a phrase you might be hearing more often lately. But what is seawater desalination? Simply put, seawater desalination is the process of taking salt water and removing the salt, leaving water that can be further treated for municipal drinking water. Seawater desalination is a process that requires a large plant producing enough water that can be used by an entire region. So let's break it down. How would desalination work in Corpus Christi? Seawater is carefully removed from the bay using a very slow flow. Additionally, very small screens are used to cover intake pipes, designed to reduce the risk of sea life being pulled in with the flow. The salt water will now undergo reverse osmosis. During this process, a portion of the water has salt removed. The water without salt now moves on for standard disinfection treatment before it is added to our distribution system for everyday use. The remaining portion of water with salt is carefully reintroduced back into the bay where it came from, using a process called jet diffusion, which was recommended by the Heart Research Institute. To ensure minimal impact on the bay's environment, research was conducted to find the best area for the outflow. That's why the salt will be carefully released into shipping channels. Research data shows the natural flow of the bay will mix the diffused portion of the water with salt, resulting in negligible impacts on aquatic life. The city of Corpus Christi is committed to ongoing research, focused on understanding the environment and continuous sustainability of our bays. By adding seawater desalination to our existing water resources, we will have a drought-resistant water supply for the city and the region's water system that will see us well into our future. For more information on proposed seawater desalination plants, visit desal.cctexas.com or the Corpus Christi Water Utilities website. Corpus Christi Water Utilities, keeping the water flowing and the coastal bend growing.
Okay, so our next step is we're going to enter into the comment section of tonight's town hall. So we'll begin that now.
Thank you, CO Murphy. For those of you just joining us, my name is Vieri Beretti, and I'm your host for this evening's town hall on a drought-proof solution for the coastal bend. If you're watching this meeting on Facebook or YouTube and you'd like to make a comment live on air, please use the phone number and ID code provided to dial into the event. Once you are connected, press *3 to get into line. To speak to an operator, to give you, to be able to make your comment. Here are a couple things to keep in mind. Firstly, while you're waiting for your name to be called, please turn off any sound from your computer. Simply listen to the meeting through your phone. Otherwise, the whole audience will hear feedback when you go live on air. If we do hear feedback, we will mute your line and let you try again after another participant. Secondly, please keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. I will let you know when you have 10 seconds remaining. Thirdly, offensive or abusive language will not be tolerated. We do want to hear your views and hope to have a very productive meeting. Our first comment tonight, we're just waiting for those comments to come in. From participants. So again, please press *3 on your phone keypad to connect to an operator to be able to make a comment. We're just waiting for our operators to connect with participants to be able to make those comments. We'll give you a couple of seconds to be able to connect. Again, press *3 on your telephone if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. And you'd like to make a comment live on air, please use the phone number and ID code provided to dial into the event to be able to make your comment. Our first comment comes from John. John, you are live. Please go ahead with your comment, and I'll remind you, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, this is John LaRue, I am the president and CEO of the United Corpus Christi Chamber of Commerce. Our infrastructure committee and our full board has, over the past few years, passed 2 resolutions in favor of desal, one for the overall concept and another for the city's efforts. We know that this region needs a sustainable and consistent water supply if it is going to continue to grow. I think a lot of the opposition that we're seeing to this, while some of it is well-intended, there are parts of it that are just anti-growth and don't want things to change. That's fine if you have everything for yourself, but for people that live here and are trying to work their way up, growth and new jobs are what they need. I was involved when I was at the port with the city and port's efforts to build the Mary Roads pipeline to bring water from Lake Texana when we were in a drought in the 90s. And we heard a lot of the same things at that time about doing that, where people were not willing to take a chance and to build something like that, where the city went out and issued debt and the port actually managed the process. But that worked well. We brought that Lake Texana water to the city. It's still there. And that water helped us get through some of the droughts in the late 90s and early 2000s. So the chamber is in complete support of what this effort from the city is, and we look forward to having desal in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Bob. Bob, you are live. Please go ahead with your comment.
All right. Hi, good evening. Thank you. I'm Bob Paulison. I'm the Executive Director of Port Industries of Corpus Christi. First, I want to thank you for allowing me to comment tonight. Thank you for holding this town hall, and thank you for your leadership in advancing a secure long-term water supply, in particular, a seawater desal component, which is drought-proof. Like Mr. LaRue just pointed out, and the mayor earlier, as well as the city manager, a secure, reliable, affordable, sustainable water supply is absolutely critical to the long-term success of everyone in Corpus Christi and in the coastal bend, our economic future, the quality of life that we all enjoy here. The balanced, deliberate, and methodical approach that the city's been engaged in for 7 years has led us up to tonight. Over that time, numerous options have been evaluated, alternative supply sources have been considered, and based on all of those evaluations, the addition of seawater desalination as part of the water supply system was repeatedly arrived at as the best option available to us at this time to increase the robustness and reliability of our water supply system. I'll just close by saying that even with 7 years invested to this point, there are still several more years of work before water is flowing from a seawater desalination plant. It's imperative that we keep moving forward. I think the city and its entire team is doing the right thing, doing it well, and I commend you again for your leadership in this area, and thank you for everything that you're doing to reinforce the water supply and make sure that we've got a critical resource available to all of us going into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob, for your comments. Our next speaker is Kathy. Kathy, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi, Kathy, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your comment. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Kathy Paulison, and I live in Port Aransas, Texas. And I want to say that, number one, to Mayor Guajardo and Billy Lerma and anybody else sitting there, and to Peter Zanoni, this is not a town hall meeting. I've done town hall meetings, and you know what a town hall meeting is? A town hall meeting is where people are in the same room. There is questions, there is discussions, there is conversations. This is not any of that. So number one, so don't call this a town hall meeting, because this isn't. It's a joke of a meeting. I want to let you know, and especially Mr. Murphy, you can't get to the Corpus Christi desal page from the city's main page. And I just went through the whole thing just to check, and you can't get there at all. Now, maybe you can if you sit there and go through all the menu items, but I did go through some of the menu items and I still couldn't get there. You can't click on the link for this meeting right now for YouTube or Facebook from the announcement page that you have posted. That virtual town hall thing that we're looking at right now, that those links there, you can't click on them. So how many people can't even participate in this meeting? I'm imagining it's a ton. So to consider this to be a meeting is a joke. Everybody has been demanding a physical in-person meeting, and I want to know why this isn't. And don't explain the COVID excuse, because we all know the COVID excuse is just that, an excuse. Everybody else is doing in-person meetings, and everybody in the city of Corpus Christi has been doing in-person meetings. There's no reason this meeting shouldn't be in person. I want to say naturally that the Port of Corpus Christi wants the city of Corpus Christi to move forward, because the Port of Corpus Christi has messed up so bad with their applications right now for desalination. Now, let's call this what this is. Desal is strictly for industry. It is not for citizens, whether it's Nueces County, Sampat, or anybody else. It is not for the public that lives here. It is for the industry that you want to bring in. And I think it's clear from multiple things that are going on, people are not wanting this much industry. We want more focus on other avenues to bring
Thank you, Kathy, for your comments. I will remind our audience that we're allowing 2 minutes for speakers. We have a lot of people who'd like to make comments, and that's why we're restricting it to 2 minutes. I will give you a warning at 10 seconds before your 2 minutes are up. Our next speaker is Lydia. Lydia, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hi, I'm calling from the unceded territories known as Sagna, infamously known as Venice, California, and we are facing the same Dr. Seuss poor planning, as we do not want desalination here or there. We don't want it anywhere. This meeting is perfunctory, and much to performance tonight, it's merely a routine that's done hastily and superficially. It's some kind of common courtesy, and Texans are very big on courtesy, but you can pretty much say very mean things with a smile on your face. I'm very familiar with it. You already decided. It sounds as if the city officials already decided. How is this sustainable? This is not sustainable, especially if other countries and other states are doing it. Doesn't mean that it's correct. We're not going to have any kind of growing economic future for Corpus Christi or the Bay, any of the Gulf territories, because the commerce use of this water is going to be spitting out toxic swirl brine, and none of you will have your grandchildren play, swim, or fish in it. So really, what is the truth here? It's about corporate dollars. It's about investing in corporate 7-year generations, not the people. The people need the tourist business, the family restaurants, the family businesses, the rentals, the beautiful space that can be, the ocean, uplifting health for everyone. Corpus Christi has been rebuilding different zones downtown and all around. For what tourists? No one's going to want to spend their money there. So be truthful, be honest, and do better. Be a better relative. Either you're part of the hurting or you're part of the healing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Lydia. Our next speaker is Larry. Larry, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Okay, my name's Larry White. I'm a licensed engineer with some experience with reverse osmosis and discharges into the environment. Corpus Christi has the opportunity to be the leader in seawater desalination for cases where the plant is located several miles from the ocean or the Gulf, as in our case. The drought in the western states and the increased demand for fresh water show that the need for desalination plants will increase globally. The Inner Harbor and the Corpus Christi Polymers desalination plants will lead the way for others by showing broader opportunities on where a seawater desalination plant can be located. But, and I mean this is a big but, we must not cut corners, particularly in the evaluation of the long-term environmental impact. We have to do it right the first time. In light of this, I do have one question. Will the TCEQ or EPA wastewater permit for the desalination plants require long-term salinity monitoring of the ship channel and Corpus Christi Bay? I thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for your comments. Our next speaker is Errol. Errol, you're live. Please go ahead with your comment. I'll remind you have 2 minutes to speak.
All right, thank you. I have multiple problems with the way this is being conducted. Suffice to say, holding this during the holidays and limiting folks to 2 minutes is absurd, and you need to follow the council's suggestions and have an in-person meeting. Since I have no time to explain my objections to the concept of desalination within the Bay, I'm going to just ask some questions that I hope will be answered. Number one, Freeze and Nichols stated that they have conducted modeling on the impacts the two facilities would have on the Bay. We would like to see those modeling and the results. Will those be made available to the public? Number two, the CC Polymers desalination facility will be operational in 2023. Why didn't Freeze and Nichols include their facility when looking at cumulative impacts? Number three, the port is also seeking 2 permits that impact the Bay. Will Freeze and Nichols conduct modeling to measure the impacts of all 5 facilities? Number four, the port has stated its permits are for their new initiatives in hydrogen production and carbon capture. If the port receives its permits before the city, what alternatives does the city then have? Number five, the city has repeatedly stated they looked at offshore intake and discharge into the Gulf. What study are they referring to? When was that conducted? And where can the public get a copy of that study? Number six, how much power is needed to operate each facility? Please answer in a way that provides context to the public. For example, the power usage is the equivalent of the usage of X number of households. Number seven, The city continues to claim that these facilities are being built to provide a drought-free water supply. Yet when you gave your cushion for drought to Exxon and Steel Dynamics, you hit the trigger point. When will the city actually be accumulating a drought-resistant water supply above the trigger point if you continue to give it to industry? I'm going to close there. I imagine I'm pretty close to my 2 minutes, but that's 7 good questions, I think. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Errol. Our next speaker is Sylvia. Sylvia, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
First of all, I just want to say again, this is not a town hall meeting, okay? There's no exchange here. So these are the facts. 4,200 signatures were obtained during COVID last year on a petition drive. Second, no presentation has been allowed by the coalition group, for example, CAPE, Texas Campaign for the Environment, Sierra Club, none. We have not had an opportunity to provide our own presentation. Third, the mayor has not directed the city manager to meet with core leaders, despite ongoing commitment to make our voices heard during public comments. Week after week after week, we go over there, and now it's year after year. Still, no meeting. The city may have the legal right to continue to pursue destination plans without the consent of the people, but that does not make it right or morally or just. Just like preventing women from voting, preventing women from owning property or even applying for credit, condoning racism or decades of slavery. All these were legal, but not morally correct. So keep that in mind. The city cannot tell us how much this will cost, economically or environmentally. The facts do not support several desalination, now I'm getting tongue-tied, desalination plants in the Bay. So, you know, you've been hearing from us and still nothing. This, again, is a joke. The city has sold our water that we already paid for, and now you want us to pay again?
Sylvia, you have 10 seconds.
I hope citizens stand up, be heard. This is not right.
Thank you for your comments, Sylvia. Our next speaker is Paul. Paul, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Thank you. Mayor, City Council members, City Manager, and City staff. My name is Paul Schulz. I have 3 years of experience in seawater desalination, and I'm a Coastal Bend resident. I understand that the city's inner harbor permit does not consider CC Polymers seawater desalination plant, which is already permitted. This was brought up just a minute ago. This is important as their desalination plant will be operational before the city's. My question is, what impact will CC Polymers operation have on the city's desal plant? My next question is, based on the city's water demand forecast, there will be a gap before the city's desal plant will be operational. That assumes that the permits are granted in time. Why doesn't the city engage with CC Polymers to discuss using surplus water from CC Polymers desal plant that is already permitted and has up to 30 MGD of available capacity? This can be looked at as an interim step in providing a drought-proof water source for the Coastal Bend region. Thank you very much for your time, and I would love to.
Thank you, Paul, for your comments. Our next speaker is Aaron. Aaron, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hello. Well, I'm going to frame this as a question so that it gets addressed at the end of this Chandler Town Hall. And if I do not hear it, I will be, or if I do not have an answer, I will have a problem with that, and I will be contacting people. But my question is about the study conducted that showed that the desalination levels would not, in the water, the salination levels in the water would not harm wildlife because that study actually only looked at the tolerances of highly adaptive sport fish species such as, sea trout, redfish, black drum, flounder, and shrimp. And those species have a high tolerance for these salinity levels. And it actually ignored data on the effects of the other two variables affecting the species. Temperature and containment, such as heavy metals and chemicals. It ignored all three variables of temperature, salinity, metals, and toxic chemicals on benthic or bottom-swelling species. These species support the food chain in the bay that the sport fish species depend on. My direct question, which will be addressed at the end of this town hall, is how can the city put forward such a sham of a study and then make propaganda videos at the beginning of a town hall that spout them as fact when really they are manipulated lies? I don't think that's very. I don't think that's
Aaron,
good.
you have 10 seconds left.
Standard to, okay, well, that is all I wanted to say. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for your comments, Aaron. Our next speaker is Eli. Eli, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Yes, thank you. I didn't anticipate making a public comment on this webinar tonight. I was really just coming to listen. However, the reason that I'm making my comment or question, whatever you want to call it, is that I would like to know how you win an election without knowing what a town hall is, for one. For two, I would also like to know how you can post photos of children playing in water about this webinar on your website, knowing that it is for industrial use, knowing how toxic and terrible this situation could be for all of us, for the children. To me, that was a blatant disrespect to the people who care about this city. It was a blatant disrespect to the people who love this city and live in this city and are here fighting for this city. So I would say, Mayor and Council, you should be ashamed of yourselves, because I was hoping not to have to speak. I was hoping that you would be open to actually answering questions. However, I should have known by now, after all the comments we have all made, all of the time we have all spent, we are not being heard. But you can all rest assured, we are not going to stop trying to be heard. We are only going to continue talking to our neighbors, to our friends, to our families about the detriment that is coming our way just because you value profits over the people who live in this city.
Eli, you have
It makes me sad. It makes me really sad. And 10 seconds is all I need, because don't forget that we're not going to stop calling you out for the lies and the propaganda. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments, Eli. Our next speaker is Frankie. Frankie, you are live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Yeah, haku. My name is Frankie with Society of Native Nations here in Texas. I was going to say, I wrote down quite a bit of what I wanted to say, but really it's I second what people like Earl from Cape said, and, the questions that he had. And, I just want to ask you, like, at what cost do you think, we're giving into this desal proposal? You look at places like Port Arthur that is consumed by fossil fuel and petrochem infrastructure, and their health issues, their chronic respiratory cancer, are higher numbers than the national average. Corpus Christi will head in that direction if we don't stop it now. The solution isn't to give more control over the water of life that we all need to sustain ourselves and live, to corporations. It's to take it away from the corporations, heal the waters, not give them more control. These issues about what we need for our future generations, we're stealing. These corporations are stealing our futures, our children's future, because they're going to have to deal with the issues that we're not solving today. They're going to have to deal with the environmental impacts that we're causing today. And this affects the world, not just Corpus Christi, not just the Bay, because these desal plants are for industry use, for more petrochemical, more plastic, more fossil fuel, more exports.
Frankie, you have 10 seconds.
That's going to contaminate and pollute this world. If you have children, I know you want your children to not only survive, but to thrive. So ask yourself, at what cost? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Frankie. Our next speaker is Mariah. Mariah, you are live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hello, thank you. I am very concerned about the council's lack of responsiveness to citizen concerns about this and about the way that our concerns have been portrayed. Being concerned about environmental impact is not being anti-growth, as the Chamber's representative said. It's, the environmentalists in our community want smart growth. We want growth that is sustainable, growth that doesn't destroy our bays and our fragile ecosystems. And we want water that is, the population in Corpus has not had, thank goodness for the Mary Roach pipeline, and the population in Corpus has not had a huge growth in water use for residential use. Again, this desal is not for us, it's for industry. And while we want good industries in our community, we want industries that are going to contribute. We want industries that are going to be part of our tax base, that are going to fund our schools, that are going to fund our city services, our libraries, and our senior centers, not industries that have are given huge tax incentives to move here and that don't pay taxes and that sue our school districts to try to have to pay less taxes, and that make us pay for their expenses, which is what this desalination is about. It's about us, the citizens, once more taking the hit
Mariah,
for
you have
corporate
10
interests.
seconds.
We already deal with the pollution. We already deal with the attacks on our schools. We don't need more of our tax dollars being paid for more pollution. We need better corporate neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mariah. Our next speaker is Tom. Tom, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Several questions. The port industry's already received massive federal, state, and local subsidies and tax breaks. Why should Corpus Christi taxpayers further subsidize industry by building desalination plants? Another question, the city and port have talked about multiple desalination plants. What will be the cumulative effect of multiple plants discharging highly concentrated brine into Corpus Christi Bay? You seem to talk about only one discharge. Another question, why won't the city insist on an industry-funded trust fund that will indemnify anyone harmed by desalination? Because there are unknowns associated with this project. Next question, if industry wants desalination so badly, why aren't they willing to pay for a pipeline to pump the brine discharge well out into the Gulf rather than directly into the bay? My other question, the city built a couple of water towers several years ago that stand empty to this day. Why should the citizens trust the desalination analyses of the city staff, the port advocates, and hired consultants when they couldn't even handle the building and operation of a couple of water towers? And my last question, when Mayor Guajardo ran against Joe McComb, she stated her opposition to desalination, but now she's supportive of desalination. What's changed? What information has she been privy to that led her to change her position? The website her staff directs us to gives no answer to this question, and some of the links on it are even hidden behind paywalls. So that information does you no good. Those are the questions I would like addressed. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom, for your comments. We have now heard from everyone who wished to make a comment, who had pressed *3 to get into line to make a comment. Some questions have come up, and we have Corpus Christi Water Utilities staff available to respond, ready to share their expertise. We have Corpus Christi Water Chief Operations Officer Michael Murphy, Gabrielle Ramirez, Director, Corpus Christi Water, Esteban Ramos, Water Resource Manager, and Jason Coughlin, Owner's Representative with Friesen Nichols. Our first question that I will direct to the group, where is the environmental discharge modeling? That question is, where is the environmental discharge modeling?
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. So I am going to turn it over to Jason Conklin, our owner's representative for Friesen Nichols, to address that question. Jason.
Thank you, Mike. The specific modeling and the results that came out of that for the discharges for both the Inner Harbor and the La Quinta Ship Channel plants are on the city's desalination website. That's desal.cctexas.com. And those are part of the permit applications that were provided to the TCEQ.
Thank you for your answer. Another question that we heard tonight was, why was this town hall held online? That question is, why was this town hall held online?
So let me address that question, Vieri. So we had a lot of conversations about the town hall and whether we were going to have it in person or we were going to do it virtual. So we wanted to make sure that this town hall was accessible as possible. And we recognize getting to a specific location at a certain hour of the night is difficult for many of our residents, especially the elderly. Those from the outside of the city and those concerned about exposure to COVID also were a concern of ours. This project will benefit not only Corpus Christi, but an entire 7-county region of 500,000 residents. So we wanted to give an equal chance to those from the outside of the city to participate. We also believe that calling into a number is easier than driving into the city. So adding all of those factors together, it was not to be a slight to anybody on this thing. We just felt that this was the most efficient way to handle the town hall. So that's why we did that. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. And thank you for that answer. The next question that we heard from within the comments, is this water for industrial use? Is this water for industrial use?
So good question, Vieri. We've heard this question a number of times, so I'm going to turn it over to Esteban Ramos, who is our water resource manager, who is responsible for providing and seeking out additional water resources. Now, keep in mind, desalination is not to replace our water source. It is a supplement. It is added to our existing water inventory that we spoke about at the first of this meeting. So, Esteban, if you would please address that question.
Thank you, sir. That question, the city of Corpus Christi, looking at this project, we will be producing potable water. The water will be introduced into our distribution system, which then we can leverage to supply the entire region with much needed water for residential use and commercial use and our industrial partners. And so this water is vital to our entire community.
Thank you for that response. Another question that we've heard tonight, if the port gets its permit before the city does, what alternatives does the city have? If the port gets its permit before the city does, What alternatives does the city have?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yep. If the port gets its permit before the city does, what alternatives does the city have?
So this is not a competition between the city and the port. The city is doing this. We are the regional provider of water to the coastal bend area. The city of Corpus Christi has that full responsibility. We are not in competition. This is not a race. This is our effort to obtain sustainable and drought-proof source of water. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for your response. Another question that we've heard tonight: how much power is needed to operate each facility? How much power is needed to operate each facility?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So Esteban, if you or Jason could provide the answer to that. And we are in the process right now, while they're conferring over that, we are in the process of working on electrical contracts. So, or Gabe, yeah, let's let Gabe Ramirez, our Director of Water Utilities, address that question, because Gabe has got experience in our Owen Stevens water treatment plant. So Gabe, if you would take that question.
Good evening. Thank you, sir. The desalination plant is proposed to use 16 megawatts of electricity. That's what the proposed use is at this time.
Gabe, do you have a comparison of what that looks like compared to our Owen Stevens water treatment facility?
I do. Currently, Owen Stevens is using 5 megawatts of electricity.
Okay, thank you, Gabe.
That concludes the questions that we've heard this evening. I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. If your question wasn't answered, we will place questions and answers on our website, desal.cctexas.com. And again, to learn more about the drought-proof solution for the coastal bend, please visit desal.cctexas.com. City Manager Zanoni, I invite you to make some closing comments.
Vieri, hey, let me see, is that?
Mike, you might.
Okay, Vieri, can you hear me?
I can, absolutely.
Yes, sir. Did we answer all the questions? I think, I know Errol Summerlin had quite a few there listed out.
Are you muted?
We just want to make sure we've answered them all. We've answered all the questions. Did you get the ones from Errol Summerlin?
I don't have it, but I can, if you'll just pop it into the chat, then I can get it.
Well, he was a caller that had probably 5 or 6 questions in a row. Errol Summerlin, he comes to our council meetings. So we know him well. He's at, yeah.
He stated a question, yeah.
Answered the power question.
Well, and to follow up while we look at that, if you can look for that question, Mike, do you want to just follow up on the permits from the port?
Yeah, so if the port does acquire permits, these permits are transferable, to answer a question of one of the callers. And if they were to get those ahead of us, then obviously we could work with them on that.
Well, but they've also stated very clearly to several council members that they would give the city those permits.
Okay.
What happened to Errol?
So let's, Vieri, we got to reconcile how we can get Errol Summerlin's questions answered.
Yeah, I'll just have them added to the chat here, and then I will be able to view them.
Okay, great.
Just give me a moment here.
Yes, sir.
Hello, this is Esteban Ramos, Water Resource Manager. We're going over some of the questions from Mr. Sumlin, and we addressed in our discussions along with the other questions about the power. He had questions regarding the power consumption. We addressed that question. There was questions regarding the city's cumulative drought period of supply. Well, the city of Corpus Christi, again, is the wholesale provider for the region, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we have water supplies to feed our growing community. And as City Council has directed staff, once we hit the 75% trigger point of our firm yield, we should bring on a new supply of water, which this project will do. And so with that question, we've addressed much of his questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I'm still waiting for the questions that weren't addressed to be loaded in here. And when they do, I will make sure we get them out right away. And I've got a couple coming in here. We do have a number of participants who have pressed *3 in the interim who'd like to make comments. And the first person who's waiting to make a comment is John. John, you are live. Please go ahead and make your comment. I'll remind you have 2 minutes to make a comment.
Hi, I'm John from Corpus Christi. I just want to know why there was such a short notice for this meeting. I would also like to know, where will the electricity come from? And then why the city has not looked at an aggressive conservation and fixing the millions of gallons a year that leak out of the water system before they even think about anything else. And then also, why is the intake and the outflow not offshore so it doesn't hurt our bay ecosystem? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. We have another caller who'd like to make a comment. Jennifer, you're live. Please go ahead with your comment. You have 2 minutes. Jennifer, you're live. You have 2 minutes to make a comment. All right, we'll move on to Patrick. Patrick, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
For Patrick. Hello, this is for Patrick. Is that your question?
That's correct. Yeah, for Patrick.
Okay, so yeah, I have a few things. I think the ethics behind all this political push for desal is really just unwarranted for the citizens of the coastal bend. You know, we grew up with a sparkling city by the sea. We looked at tourism as being the dollar that we need to exchange with others around the world. And here we are trying to push a desal, something that technology is not proven in this environment. Where in the world do you point to a high turbidity in a bay with 35,000 parts per million, with ship traffic that kicks up silt plumes, and they model this thing as it's like it's a bullseye? I mean, the science is wrong. And the narrative behind this. As a scientist, as a geologist, there's ample water in the substrate. You can have groundwater that's drought resistant. It's not that hard to get. It's 3,000 parts per million, not 35,000 parts per million. Look at our neighbors in the Rio Grande Valley. They put in a desal in their ship channel. It failed at $67 million for 2.5 million gallons a day. They went to groundwater, and guess what? They are thriving down there. I hope that you can see your way to do the right thing. You know, is somebody going to put up a bond if we have environmental disasters within our bay? Are all the fishermen going to lose what they come down here to enjoy? So please think this thing through. Don't just ram it through our citizens and make us pay for all these things.
Thank you, Patrick, for your comments. Our next speaker is Isabel. Isabel, you're live. You have 2 minutes to make a comment.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Why is the screen for the meeting misrepresenting what you need to? Misrepresenting the instructions for how to participate and ask questions. You all conveniently left off the *3 instructions. And also, how come the city calls people who live and work in the community and have concerns about the environment special interest groups, outside special interest groups, when they don't call Exxon or Cheniere special interest groups, or those special interest projects that have code names so that we don't know who they are, those organizations that are corporations that want to come to our country, our community? Why are they not called special interest groups? Why, and I guess how is Mayor Paulette different than Joe McComb? How come you can have an event at the pier and not have a real town hall? How are we supposed to have faith that you're going to actually invest the right amount of resources in desal to maintain the facility when you can't maintain the roads or the public facilities? Also, how can you sleep at night? And how can you live with yourself? And how can you call yourself a public official when you ignore the public? And how can you not be so embarrassed of yourself and your misrepresentation of the facts and the truth?
Isabel,
Thank you.
have 10
I yield
seconds.
my time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Brandon. Brandon, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hi there. My name is Brandon Marks. I'm a resident of Corpus Christi. And I come here tonight to express that this is a sham of a town hall. Mayor Guajardo, you promised to host a town hall on desalination all the way back in August. It is now December. You dragged your feet for months and now announced this town hall close to the holidays, one of the busiest times of the year. We also submitted demands for a town hall that prioritized public participation, signed by 11 community and environmental organizations in this community. You not only ignored these demands, but you have put together a town hall that appears designed to minimize public participation. Others have already laid out the ways that this town hall is a sham and undermines participation. So let me tell you what a real town hall would look like. A real town hall would give the public at least a month of notice. It would have hybrid options to participate in person and online. It would be scheduled for a time that is not one of the busiest of the year. Each person would have up to 5 minutes to speak. It would make participating easy. It would have options to listen and participate in all language spoken by your community. We've been dealing with COVID for almost 2 years now. This is not rocket science. If Nueces County and Judge Barbara Canales can conduct their meetings in person and on Zoom at the same time, so can you. This is clearly an attempt to avoid public participation and accountability. Mayor Guajardo, Manager Zanoni, and Water Utilities Chief Murphy, you should all be ashamed for putting this out into the public and should issue an apology to the public immediately. This is a sham of a town hall. We demand real public participation and a complete stop to desalination. If you can't be trusted with a town hall, you can't
Brandon,
be trusted
you have
with
10
desalination.
seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Chris. Chris, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Yes, I just want to say that LaRue he really nailed it there in saying that, you know, back in the 90s, the Mary Rhodes pipeline, the port was instrumental in that, and that is what precipitated us having 70-year-old water mains and having
rusted holes in our water tanks. So then we had to build new water tanks. But we never, so like 40 years ago, we built the pipelines because the refineries had to have the pipelines, right? And we borrowed all the money to do that, and we never fixed our pipes, and we never fixed our tanks. And we just let them rust, or we let the pipes sit there. And then we had to fix the tanks because we're going to have to pay the money. So we, instead of paying the money to the EPA and TCEQ, we built the tanks. But we couldn't build the tanks in a way that would work with our 70-year-old pipes. And we still have to drink out of those. So my question is, why do my kids have to drink out of 70-year-old pipes? Can somebody tell me that? Why our kids have to drink out of 70-year-old pipes, water mains, and why industry is prioritized? I want to, those are questions that I want to know. And yeah, this is a joke. I want to invite everyone down to the pier tomorrow, and you can ask questions of these people right to their face. Everybody is invited down to the pier. The Cole Park Pier is going to be opened up. If you're interested in fishing and you're not interested in spending $500 million to ruin fishing in Corpus Christi and ruin the bay, then I suggest you go down there and ask these people to their face about it tomorrow. And my other question is, when we do schedule a real town hall, can we have it on Vol's boat down there? Can we have it on Vol's boat? Who do I ask? Can we have it on Vol's boat? Who can do that for me? $800 a month. Wow. This all makes so much sense.
Thank you for your comments, Chris. Our next speaker is Chloe. Chloe, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
I sure can. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, first I want to echo everything that people have said before me about this being a sham of a town hall. Like it was said earlier, we sent demands back in September. They were ignored, much like all of our concerns, and kind of ruled out as like these hippy-dippy, oh my gosh, they care about the environment, they must be terrible people. Guess what? We're just trying to protect our community because obviously so-called leaders won't do it. Like also said earlier, this is a manufactured water crisis. Love how you had a little timeline of all the different droughts, but never really told us what was the cause of those droughts. And the industry sucks all of our water away. 80% of our water goes to heavy industry right now. And there's also an upcoming another polluting project called Blue Water, who in their draft environmental impact statement, the Maritime Administration did just for their hydro testing, just to make sure that this oil export terminal will work. They want 11 million gallons of water. And guess what they identified as the water source? Municipal sources. That means that this water is from the desal plant. Who is going to provide it for Blue Water? Can you answer that for us? Do you have plans on collaborating with that polluting project? Because you already gave our water away to Exxon Sabic, and for any of you listening still, that's the largest plastic plant in the world. So we are pursuing growth, but it is growth that literally kills the life of everything that it touches. Second of all, how dare you use the phrase "water is life" as you deride, as you
Chloe, you have 10
condescend
seconds.
to actual water protectors here. Also, get a timer. Why are you interrupting people? This is ridiculous. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Aaron. Aaron, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hello. I am back on this line because, and don't you dare disconnect me, by the way. I am back on this line because the previous time that I called, my question was not answered. And I had stated that if it was not, I would be calling again and I would be contacting people. Now, my question, and it better be answered this time, is why is the city claiming that this will not damage aquatic life when the study that they conducted that showed that only looked at fish species and aquatic life that was not affected by changes in salinity levels. These were highly adaptive sport species such as sea trout, redfish, black drum, flounder, and shrimp. These species have a high tolerance. It ignored the data on the effects of the other two variables affecting the species, temperature and contaminants such as heavy metals and chemicals. It ignored all three variables of temperature, salinity, metals, and toxic chemicals on benthic or bottom-dwelling species. These species support the food chain in the bay that the sport fish species depend on. In other words, this would actually destroy the bay and its local ecosystem. My question, once again, better not be ignored. Why is the city promoting this sham of a study? Now, on top of that, no, I'm not done. Now, on top of that, I want to say that this is shameful that this town hall is being held in the way that it's being held. It's shameful that it got delayed so long. It is shameful that we cannot be in person. It is shameful that my question and so many other questions that are too difficult for the poor little city to answer were ignored and only answered technical things like, oh, how much power does it use? No one cares how much power it uses. Okay, people care about the questions that are being ignored, and you are choosing not to answer them. I'm done.
Thank you for your comments, Aaron. Our next speaker is Love. Love, you are live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hi, my name is Love Sanchez. I'm co-founding member of the Indigenous Peoples of the Coastal Bend, and I'm also a member of the Cronco Carla. I'm here to let you know that you all keep on providing the pros of desal. However, why have y'all not provided the cons? We keep bringing the cons to y'all. You know what I mean? And y'all ignore us. So I want to know, why haven't y'all? We could easily just Google it, and it says the cons. It's right in your face. I'm here with 2 teeth pulled out, and I have to get on because we keep bringing those cons to you, and y'all keep failing to put them on there. Every researcher, every scientist, if they have morals and values, they always put the pros and the cons of every project. Why haven't y'all done that? I yield my time.
Thank you, Love, for your comments. Our next speaker is Richard. Richard, you are live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hello, my name is Richard Rourke. I'm a resident of Ingleside on the Bay and a very concerned citizen who, but I'd like to preface this and just kind of echoing what we've been hearing tonight. The impression we're getting here is that Port of Corpus Christi are rushing headlong.
Richard, we're having trouble with your connection.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Great.
Okay, thank you. All right. My question I'd like to preface with just a general statement echoing some of the concerns we're hearing tonight from the public, and that is that it seems like the city and the Port of Corpus Christi are rushing headlong into what's basically a politically expedient solution to a very complex problem without fully weighing out the environmental impacts or the long-term impacts to the people, and the general public. The question is, why does the city choose to listen to an engineering firm that stands to make millions of dollars, not listen to experts in academia like scientists from University of Texas Marine Science Institute and the Hart Research Institute at Texas A&M University at Corpus Christi, who have studied this bay for decades and have shown the intake and discharge in the bay will be detrimental? Why does the city put the future income of dirty polluting industry of the current $1.5 billion commercial and recreational fishing industry that will be decimated potentially with a desalination intake and discharge into the bay? Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you for your comments, Richard. Our next speaker is Melissa. Melissa, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments. Melissa, please unmute yourself and go ahead with your comments. All right, we'll move on to our next speaker, Henry. Henry, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments. You have 2 minutes, and I'll remind all our listeners that if you want to make a comment, please press *3 to get into line to be able to make a comment. Henry, go ahead, you're live.
My name is Henry Williams. I'm with the Hillcrest Residents Association. And the properties that are being sought for the desalination plants are the La Quinta property and the Inner Harbor property. The Inner Harbor property is very near to the Hillcrest neighborhood. Okay? And that property is owned by Flint Hills Resources. We will be speaking with Flint Hills Resources to not sell the property to the city. We believe that the desalination project is very much in error. And I'm a third generation resident of Corpus Christi. And I believe that we should protect our resources. We should protect, indeed, the bay. We should protect our environment, very much so. And let me say this, that anyone who is interested, or those who have spoken so intelligently this evening, if you are interested in going with ourselves when we speak with Flint Hills, please feel free to call me, and I will give my telephone number, 361-563-0405. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you for your comments. I'll remind our listeners, if you would like to make a comment, please press *3 on your phone. You'll be directed to an operator who will take your name and put you in line to be able to make your comment. Our next speaker is Jennifer. Jennifer, you're live. Please go ahead with your comment.
Thank you very much. I would like to commend the city and all of the public officials and their concern for providing a sustainable source of water. And I understand that that's not an easy problem to solve, but I don't think that we should sacrifice our bay for the solution. And I would like to ask if the lessons learned from the pilot studies and other desalination plants that show variations in feed water and total dissolved solids and salinity that show that it leads to membrane failures. The Corpus Christi Bay has high variability of both total dissolved solids and salinity. Does the modeling show successful calculations using the full range of these elements? And have you included the cost and the downtime of multiple membrane failures in the overhead and maintenance estimates and the water production estimates? Please show how this has been accounted for. Also, has Freeze McNichols taken into consideration the current amount of polluting chemicals that are in the water and sediment already that have been shown in the UT-MSI reports when it determines if the amount of sediment and heavy metals that they are adding to keep the feed water from damaging the membranes will not further contribute to the damage of our ecosystem? Has Freeze and Nichols considered the impacts of this additional toxic emissions in the bay, and where is this literature? Can Freeze and Nichols provide a justification for the low cost estimate of $221 million for the La Quinta desalination plant when smaller plants in more conducive environments cost close to $1 billion? How can we make sure that the city of Corpus Christi is not being lured by a low, unrealistic construction and maintenance operation cost to get the project permitted and approved, and thus started down a rabbit hole where the project stands no chance of being built on time or within budget? Please address all of the questions that I have asked. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Melissa. Melissa, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead with your comments, Melissa. I'll remind you, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I have several questions. I keep hearing the word seawater desalination plant, but we're talking about the bay and in specifically a ship channel within that bay. So we need to start changing the language there because this is not seawater, this is estuarine water that should be better protected. We're worried about drought, then why isn't the city doing more to prevent climate change that exacerbates droughts, like stopping heavy fossil fuel industries from contributing to the problem, which will exacerbate droughts? We can't just think that we can do whatever we want here in Corpus Christi and be a bubble from the rest of the global climate. We have to take these things into consideration. I am a lifelong resident of Corpus Christi, and I know many more. Sometimes I feel like I'm nuts for staying, but I feel like it's worth trying to stop this from happening and stopping all of the destruction and trying to stay put and try to change this place for the better. We want change. We want to get out of this vicious cycle of exploitation of resources and people. What are the electrical needs? What research has been done to show the current quality and salinity of Corpus Christi Bay and specifically the ship channel, La Quinta and Inner Harbor? Seeing that this project is so expensive and will take millions of dollars to build, let alone to maintain, then why has there only been one bid accepted to Freeze and Nichols and not been out to several bids to see what different types of offers? That's just economically doesn't make sense to me.
Melissa, you have
and
10
so
seconds.
we need to look at the. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Blanca. Blanca, you're live. Please go ahead with your questions.
Yes, can you hear me?
We sure can. You have 2 minutes to make your comments.
Okay, yes. Please don't interrupt me. I don't need a countdown. Next time, put a timer up to the stooge hosting this. Don't interrupt me. I have a specific question and I want it answered specifically. I actually have a couple of questions. Why did the city divert so much and so greatly from the regional water plan that was appropriate during the time that this application was submitted? The regional water plan proposed 1 plant. Now we have a regional water plan that's proposing 5 plants. And the current regional water plan clearly states that there are no projected shortages and no projected needs for municipal needs for the city of Corpus Christi or all of its customers. Okay, so why does the city continue, and I want this answered, why does the city continue to say over and over and over again to the community that this water is needed for growth? And why do you continue to promote ads and promote propaganda implying that this water is for children, implying that this water is for people, when it's clearly not? Why do you continue to say that you're the regional water provider to mislead and to imply that you're providing water to people in the region, when in the regional water plan, there is no projected need until 2070? My second question, Guajardo, did you wait until after the TCEQ comment period closed to have this town hall? Is it because you can't face the community or you're afraid?
Blanca,
Why? Why do you strategically wait until then?
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Marilena. Marilena, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Yes, my name is Marilena Garza, and I am a small business owner here in Corpus Christi. I'm also a lifelong resident of the Coastal Bend, and I'm just so pro Corpus Christi. I cannot wait to show the tourists all the great things about Corpus Christi. I don't know where to start first. If maybe I should take them to Cole Park, to the new pier, and show them that whenever we have torrential rains, that you can see raw sewage spilling out into the bay. and warning tourists, hey, we're going to get desal plants, but we can't fix this EPA violation that we are going to get fined with if we don't fix this. But wait, there's more. Let me take you to the Nueces Bay, which used to be a grassland when my grandfather and my father fished out there. They used to tell me stories of how beautiful that bay is. It's disgusting. It is a wasteland. It's already almost a dead zone as it is. So I just look forward to showing all the new tourists, all the great desalination plants that we're trying to build for heavy industry. I think I must have gotten into the wrong type of business. I'm in beauty and health and wellness. I should have gotten into heavy industry, and I would have had city council advocating and pushing so hard for my growth. I don't know how, as a small business owner, I'm going to overcome the challenges that the city has laid out for all of us small business owners, between the crumbling infrastructure, the homelessness crisis that is taking over our city, and we're worried about desalination. You know, maybe if I was in heavy industry, I would be getting the same bribes that city council is receiving. This is a sham. You guys should be embarrassed. You should go to church and pray about it. I yield my time.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Daniel. Daniel, I'll remind you, you have 2 minutes to make your comment. I'll remind all of the listeners that if you want to make a comment, please press *3 on your phone to get into line to be able to speak. Daniel, you're live. Go ahead with your comments.
Hi, my name is Daniel Wilkerson. I'm a professional fishing guide in Ingleside, Texas. I have a few questions for the group here. And why is this plant not being built out on Mustang Island as recommended by the Hart Research Institute? You know, why is the city of Corpus not demanding that the intake and discharge be located out in the Gulf of Mexico, where we can ensure that no harm will be done to the bay system? You know, what is the water turnover rate of Corpus Christi Bay? It's close to 2 years before any water that is within the bay makes itself out into the Gulf and is replaced. You know, how can we ensure that as we dump brine into the bay, that it's not compiled and gets exchanged in a timely manner? That's all I have. Please answer these questions, as my livelihood depends on it.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Brandon. Brandon, you're live. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can, Brandon. Go ahead with your comments.
Great. My name's Brandon. I'm Corpus Christi resident. I spoke earlier, but I was concerned that all the questions being put in the comments of the video on Facebook are not being considered. And I wanted to bring a few of those to the public conversation here. And so here are some of the questions that are being asked in the comments. Who is going to build this plant and who will operate it? Another question, why did you have to hire a Canadian public relations firm to moderate this conversation between us? Why can't you speak to your constituents directly? What if the budget runs over? Who will bear the cost? And we're in a so-called water crisis because you have committed 80% of the region's water to heavy industry. Will you commit and promise today to provide not a single gallon more of water to heavy industry? Can the engineering show that desalination will not increase red tide? Will red tide shut down the facility? And have you included this shutdown and startup costs in your projections? Where is the electricity to run this plant coming from? And will you compensate business owners and residents who are going to be impacted by desalination, like those involved with tourism, fishing, and other water sports, who are going to see negative impacts? Will they be compensated? Again, those are just some of the questions that have been coming in the chat. I hope you address these as well as others. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Kathy. Kathy, you're live. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, hello.
We can hear you, Kathy.
Thank you. I would like to know several things, since y'all were acting like we weren't asking good enough questions, I guess.
I would like to know, number one, why did Mayor Guajardo and the Corpus Council approve this virtual meeting and not a real town hall? And also, do Peter Zanoni and the mayor know what a town hall meeting is? I would like this question answered by one of them and not by Mr. Murphy. I would also like from them, why is the city pursuing negotiations for two properties to purchase, one at La Quinta and one at Inner Harbor? Because you only have approval for maybe not even enough money to build one desal plant for that loan, yet you are still pursuing two permits and two locations. So what is your intent for the other permits that you won't have the money for anyway? And I would also like to say that Mr. Summerlin's questions were not all answered, and to say that it's in the application is not an answer. We are asking direct questions. We would like direct answers. And finally,
Kathy, you
I
have 10
apologize. Thank you. And I just want to say again, this is not a town hall meeting. We need a real meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Catherine. Catherine, you're live. Please go ahead with your comments.
Okay, I have several questions that I too would like answered. What is the business case? The Inner Harbor desal plant alone will cost at least $23 million per year to construct and operate, $7 million to pay back the SWIFT loan, and $16 million to operate. To increase water consumption to pay for desal plants, how many new, thirsty, and polluting petrochemical industries like Exxon Sabic will need to operate in the coastal bend? How many combined MGD of water will these industries need to purchase in order to make this desal plant, or both of them, financially viable? How many high water using customers are there, and how many are currently paying the drought exemption fee? Once the desal plant is constructed, what will motivate them to continue to pay the fee? Texas Parks and Wildlife recommends subsea floor options like infiltration galleries and directional drilling in order to prevent impingement and entrainment. But the city's own Mr. Ramos has said that this is not possible inside ship channels, so only screens are proposed. Since the recommended method to protect aquatic life is not possible in the selected locations, why is the city insisting on placing its desal plants in the Inner Harbor and La Quinta ship channels in the first place? According to the city's own regional water supply fact sheet, 156 MGD of water is lost because of evaporation from its two reservoirs. What has the city done to address evaporation loss? What alternatives have you explored? What are the names of desal plants located in shallow, low turnover bays that are comparable to Corpus Christi Bay? And a 2015 study by Stuns and Montagna of Hart Research Institute conducted for the city assessed potential desal sites. La Quinta came up as the least desirable due to environmental impacts. Why does it keep turning up as a top choice for seawater desal now, ignoring the results of your own 2015 study? And why are you claiming that installing jet diffusers will make the massive amounts of brine discharge safe to aquatic life in La Quinta Channel, when this 2015 study states specifically that submerged jet diffusers to turbidity, affecting the phytoplankton community and shading out seagrass? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. We have again heard from all participants who wanted to make a comment, and we've gotten some questions that we'd like to address. And I'll review those questions right away. The first question that we've gotten from the comments, is why not use groundwater? Why not use groundwater?
Okay, the question regarding why not use groundwater. the city of Corpus Christi, we did look at a lot of alternative water supplies. We had an RFI, a request for information, that went out to the community looking at different types of sources such as groundwater, reuse, and seawater desalination. And with regarding groundwater in our area, we have very shallow type of aquifer. And the aquifer water that we have in this area does have a high salinity value. And so we did look at it, we did address it. If we were to use groundwater, we would still need to go through a RO process. So to answer the question from the caller, we have addressed it. The quantities and qualities of that groundwater in our area are not sufficient of a quality that seawater desalination would provide to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. The next question we have is, where will the electricity come from? Where will the electricity come from?
So regarding the question of where the electricity would come from, the city of Corpus Christi, we would contact a power provider, and that would come from the electrical grid. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. The next question is, why has the city not looked at aggressive conservation and addressing the water that leaks out of the water system before exploring other options?
So with regard to our water conservation plan, the city of Corpus Christi does have a very aggressive water conservation plan, which we do a lot of community activities and trying to educate our users on how to efficiently use and conserve water. We also work internally to address any leakage within the system as fast as we can so that we can have as little water loss in our system. Working with our community, we have put out a lot of ads and a lot of press talking about the little things that you can do in your household. And it's on us to conserve water as an individual. And so the city of Corpus Christi has done and will continue to promote water conservation with our community, both from our residential and our commercial users as a whole, and as a whole within the Coastal Bend with our wholesale providers. Thank you very much for that question.
Thank you for your response. The next question is, why not have the intake and outtake be offshore in order to protect the bay ecosystem?
So thank you, Very. Jason Conklin with Freezing Nichols, our owner's representative. Could you want to take a shot at what we looked at when we were determining these two site locations?
Go on.
Yes, sir. When we talk about the site assessment, we really like to highlight the three objectives, kind of the three legs of a stool. We had to find a site that would be environmentally sensitive and sustainable so that we could build a plant and operate a plant in a way that would have what's called a de minimis impact. So really no significant or no impact to the environment. We also had to find a site that was economically feasible. We want to make sure that at any project that comes to the Coastal Bend at this magnitude is feasible and has a small to no impact to the ratepayer. And third, we had to make sure that the plant would provide water supply reliability for the region. So looking at all those things, while offshore certainly achieves one of those objectives, it does not achieve the economic feasibility objective. So what we found in our siting study, we looked at 21 different sites, was that all three of those objectives could be achieved inshore, and we could still meet the requirements of that de minimis impact to the environment.
Thank you for your response. COO Murphy, can you address the water storage tanks?
You talking about the two, Gary?
Could we, a little bit more information there, Gary?
The question I have is, can you address the water storage tanks?
Just talk
Okay,
about the
so,
two that we're gonna.
yeah, so I'm actually going to let Gabe Ramirez, our Water Utilities Director, answer that question because he's more familiar with it than I am. Gabe?
All right, good evening. Thank you, sir. The elevated storage tanks. So starting out, this past Tuesday, council did approve for us to do the modifications to the Holly and Rand Morgan.
The speaker or what? I guess I don't see the speaker.
Is that?
The Holly and Rand Morgan elevated storage tanks modifications were approved Tuesday. And so that's going to allow us to bring those tanks online by May 2022. With that, the next steps are going to be to rehabilitate the Alameda and Galahar elevated storage tanks. And following that, also in FY22, we will break ground for the new Flower Bluff elevated storage tank. And at that time, then we can demolish the existing Flower Bluff tank as well as the Morgan ground elevated storage tank. And those are our plans for the elevated storage tanks.
Thank you for your answer. COO Murphy, will the TCEQ or EPA permit require long-term salinity monitoring in the ship channel or Corpus Christi Bay? I'll repeat the question. Will the TCEQ or EPA permit require long-term salinity monitoring in the ship channel or Corpus Christi Bay?
Okay, so thank you for that question, Barry. So looking at my team there, so Jason or Maria Corona, who is our environmental specialist on this, if you guys could address that question, please.
With regards to the question of, we will work with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Right now, that discharge application is going through the proper channels in vetting with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. We are working with them if they have any questions concerning our modifications to that application and what comes out of that. We will use the best available technologies that the TCEQ will require us to do. So we have made that commitment. And along that thought, the city of Corpus Christi has gone above and beyond in the permitting process. We have done a lot of monitoring within the two locations, both on La Quinta Channel and in the Inner Harbor, to make sure that we use actual data in our modeling platforms that we submitted to the TCEQ. That is a commitment that we've made to the community to use the best available technologies, and we will continue to do that. If the TCEQ requires us to use continuous monitoring within the applications, we would abide by any special conditions that the TCEQ requires us to do. But at this time, the TCEQ is evaluating those applications, and we await further discussions with Texas Commission on Environmental Quality.
Thank you for that answer to that important question. COO Murphy, some more questions that came up in the comments that were made by participants earlier in the evening. The next question is, why does the city not address metals and temperature in their environmental study? Why does the city not address metals and temperature in their environmental study?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part of this, and then I'm going to turn it over to the team. But the intake is going to go through an extensive pre-treatment process, just as we would any raw water that we're taking into our system, just like we do from the surface water that we take in at the Owen Stevens water treatment facility. Is going to go through substantial pre-treatment process before it actually goes through the reverse osmosis process. And actually, we will be putting cleaner water back into the bay than we'll be taking out, because all of the heavy metals, all of the suspended solids, everything that's in the water that is harmful to make it potable water will will be removed in the form of sludge, and then will be taken to a local landfill. And then all we're reintroducing into the harbor is the existing salt that was taken out with the additional water. So with that said, Jason, I'll turn it over to you to be a little bit more engineering than I am on that, or Gabe, and address the rest of that question.
Yes, good evening. So as far as the discharging of metals, there is not going to be heavy metals discharged once it goes through the treatment process. We're not discharging heavy metals. As far as the temperature change, the water being discharged will be about approximately 2 degrees warmer, but that's from friction and other processes there during the treatment process.
Thank you for the answer to that question. Another question that has come up is this project being rushed? COO Murphy.
Well, it's hard to say that that's the case, because obviously we do not believe that we're rushing the project. This has gone through lengthy conversations over the course of several years. The problem here, or the problem, I guess, with that question is, we just went through the most historic drought on record in 2011, 2014. Now, what we're looking for is not a replacement of our water system. What we're looking for is a supplement to our existing water inventory. And so, no, we're not rushing the process. We are being very thoughtful and very, very thorough with this. And we've enlisted some of the brightest minds, not just in the state of Texas, not just in the United States, but in the entire world, to work on this project for us. And we've gone to great lengths and great extent to create what we think is going to be the environmental process that is surely to follow what we're going to do. Because make no doubt about it, make no mistake that desalination is the water source of the future for the Gulf Coast region. It's coming, it's going to happen. So it's our responsibility to be as environmentally conscious as technology and as science allows. And that's what we're working on. So thank you for that question.
And thank you for your answer. And Chief Operations Officer Michael Murphy, I have a few more questions to pose to you that came up in the comments that were made by the participants earlier in the evening. The next one was, why has the city diverted from the Region N water plant? Why has the city diverted from the Region N water plant?
That's a good question, sir. Why has the city working with the Region N water plan? Well, I'd like to address that this way. Each year, every 5 years, the Region N water plan is looked at again and modified. With changes to our region, more demands, more industrial, more residential growth, the plan is there to change and adapt to our growing community. Within the 2021 plan, the city of Corpus Christi's 2 seawater desalination plants were included because the city of Corpus Christi saw and sees that the need for a drought-proof water supply that would feed our entire region moving into the future. So as a member of the Region N water planning group, it is my duty to look at our entire community and looking towards the future and providing these projects that will bring more water and more reliability during drought of records, during times when we have growth in our areas to supply our region. So with this living document, this Region N water plan, we can adapt and change and to meet our growing needs. So the plan has been modified. Every 5 years, we look at the plan and we adapt as needed. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. I have a 3-part question, or a question that's in 3 questions. Why not build on Mustang Island? Why is the intake and discharge in the Gulf? What is the turnover of the water in the bay? So why not build on Mustang Island?
I think we got it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we got it, Vieri. So we did start off with 21 locations. I think Jason Conklin talked about that earlier. So Jason, if you could just walk through that again about the process that we went through and some of the facilities that we looked at. You don't have to go through all 21 of them, but to address this question, if you just answer that again, please.
Yeah, so the first question about a plant on the island, some of the challenges with a plant on the island are that it's pretty far from your demand centers. Your demand centers being the city of Corpus Christi and San Patricio County. So being on the island creates the need for very long infrastructure, conveyance infrastructure, large pipelines that go over long distances. And so that gets very expensive. And then the potential environmental impacts there on the island are actually greater than constructing the plant itself inland, as well as building the pipeline infrastructure. You'd have to build the pipeline infrastructure across very sensitive ecosystems, and we want to be very cognizant of that. And then the third part of the question, you'll have to remind me.
The third part of the question is, what is the turnover of the water in the bay?
That's right. The Texas Water Development Board did a study several years ago that looked at freshwater inflows to the bay and estimated that the turnover in our bay system is about 1.4 years. And so that is the only study that I'm aware of that's looked at the overall turnover. And again, that's really specifically just focused on the freshwater inflows. So because of tidal influence, we believe the turnover is actually less time than that the bay actually turns over more than every 1.4 years.
Thank you for the answer to that those questions. COO Murphy, the next question is, who will build the plant?
So that's a great question. Again, we are in the early phases of this. We're still in the land acquisition phase, and we've had several conversations during council meetings and during internal meetings with staff. That is part of the procurement process. So there are all of the options are still on the table, and they're going to be on the table until we zero in on exactly what that's going to look like, how we're going to build it, and who's going to build it, who's going to own it, who's going to operate it, who's going to maintain it. Those questions all will be answered as we continue to move this process forward, but it has not been determined at this point.
Thank you for the answer to that question. The next question for you, COO Murphy, why are you pursuing negotiations on 2 properties?
Okay, so when the land sites were narrowed down to the Inner Harbor and La Quinta Channel site, it was designed originally or laid out originally as a 2-phase project. Phase 1, Inner Harbor, phase 2 is La Quinta. So we're continuing to look at that to see if that phase process still works, whether it's going to be one or the other, which is going to come first. But we've narrowed it down to 2 sites. And the question is that probably when would the phase 2 happen? And that would be based on existing demand. Phase 1 is water that is going to provide the additional drought-proof source of water to our water inventory. That it is our goal to bring that into the city and into the San Patricio water supply system. That's our goal for phase 1. So we're still working on with permits. We will have a better idea of that as we progress, but we are actively pursuing both sites as land acquisition sites.
Thank you for that answer to the question. I have one final question that needs to be answered that came up from the comments that were made earlier in the evening. And again, COO Murphy, I'll direct it towards you. Can you tell us about non-interruption agreements that the city has with industry?
Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry, we were kind of going through that question, Gary. So Esteban, our water resource manager, who's responsible for those conversations. Esteban, if you'll take that right quick.
Yes.
We'll close this out.
Yes, sir. So to make the project economically feasible, from the very beginning, we looked at how we can achieve that goal. And working with our large volume users, we set up a drought exemption surcharge fee that is a voluntary fee that our large volume users can contribute to. And with this fund, that will pay close to 2/3 of the construction costs for this project, it makes the entire seawater desalination project very economically feasible. So it is the community giving back to this project that makes this project possible. So the drought surcharge exemption fee is a critical component of this project. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. And CEO Murphy, I'm going to ask one more question of you. Is the question that came up in the comments, is the brine toxic?
So if you go back to the original opening, we showed a presentation of how the desalination plant and desalination system works. We try to make it as simple as possible and easy to understand, but we are not adding additional salt to the bay. We're not adding anything to the bay that wasn't already there. We're taking water out, we're removing the salt, we are reintroducing it back into the bay. So no, the brine is not toxic. So I'll let Jason, our owner's representative, if you want to expand on that a little bit, Jason, please do.
Yes, sir. And I hope to take a real quick opportunity here to respond to so maybe one of Aaron's or Brandon's questions as well. But just on the toxicity of the brine, you're exactly right, Mr. Murphy, that not only are we not introducing anything to the bay that's not already there, but we're actually removing some of the heavy metals that are in the raw water. So for example, the pretreatment process has the ability to remove copper that's in the water, remove lead that's in the water, and a whole long list of other constituents and parameters. So in a sense, the water that we put back is actually cleaner than the water that we take out. It's also very low turbidity. There was a question about turbidity and potentially impacting seagrasses, but the water that goes back out through the diffusers is very low turbidity water. And introduced with a lot of energy so that it mixes with the ambient water. The brine is not just not toxic to people, but we looked at a lot of different species in our toxicity evaluation and making sure that what we're doing is environmentally sustainable. And there's a report on critical dilutions where we looked at, not just sport fish, but also benthic organisms. And I'll just call some attention to tables 3 and 4. We even looked at species of seagrasses to make sure that the discharge would be acceptable for those species as well. So not only non-toxic, but we really have been sensitive to what we're going to put back in the environment.
Thank you so much for that answer. And thank you to everyone for participating tonight. If your question wasn't answered, we will place questions and answers on our website at desal.cctexas.com. And again, to learn more about the drought-proof solution for the Coastal Bend, please visit desal.cctexas.com. And at this time, I will ask City Manager Peter Zanoni to make some closing comments. Peter, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Barry. So with that, as we promised our viewers and attending audience to this town hall, we want to be mindful of your schedule this evening. It's just a minute shy of 9. This concludes this very exciting town hall meeting for this evening. Your questions, as Barry said, that may not have been answered, and all questions actually will be placed on our website with the answers from tonight's event at desal.cctexas.com. We want to thank everyone who called in and who watched. We know that it takes time. We know that a lot of you have families and college work and cooking and homework for children. So We appreciate you taking some time out to share your thoughts and comments and questions with us because they are valuable insight for the mayor and council as they deliberate on this important policy issue for generations to come, not just for our city, but for the entire coastal Bend region. We know that the need for water is increasing, and this is something that is happening not just here in our community and in our backyards, but across the entire country. And so we are working towards, the mayor and council is working towards a drought-proof water solution that benefits everyone. Tonight, I can say for myself, and I think for the mayor and council and the others that were watching, this was a very informative town hall tonight. And again, we're glad you participated. And again, if you want more information, visit our website at desal.cctexas.com. So that is it for this evening. We want you to be safe, and we also want you to have a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to come. And good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, City Manager Peter Zanoni. Thank you, and have a great evening.
The Access Live event